Velkommen til jer, som har tilmeldt jer dagens webinar om C-Brace. Det er dejligt, at der har været så stor interesse for det. Vi har en halv time nu. Forhåbentlig så passer det til jeres frokostpause. Og vi kommer til at bruge den halve time, hvor vi hovedsageligt får vores specialist fra Sverige, Marco, fra Ottobock, til at give en præsentation om C-Brace. Har I spørgsmål undervejs, så må I rigtig gerne skrive dem ude i chatten, så følger vi op på det efter Marcos præsentation. Marco, han holder sin præsentation på engelsk. Er der noget, som er uklart eller andet, så giv lige et pip, så sidder vi klar til at oversætte det. Og det er også fuldstændig fair at skrive spørgsmålet på dansk, og Pau og jeg, vi taler dansk. Dem af jer, der ikke kender os, jeg hedder Christian, og jeg er fysioterapeut i Savas rehabiliteringsafdeling, og jeg er sammen med min trofaste makker, Paulette Larsen, som også er fysioterapeut i Savas rehabiliteringsafdeling. Og så har vi så allieret os med Marco, som er bandagist, ortopædingeniør fra Ottobock i Sverige. Og jeg tror, at hvis vi skal nå det hele, og I skal nå tilbage til de patienter, I har på klokken 12:30, så skal vi se at komme videre. Så jeg giver ordet til Marco, og Marco han tager ordet, og så tager han også og deler sin skærm, så I kan se hans præsentation. Og vi optager det her webinar, så I kan tilgå det bagefter også. Og eventuelle spørgsmål, I må meget gerne skrive i chatten, hvem I er og hvor I lytter med fra. Det vil være dejligt. Og skriv dem undervejs i præsentationen, og så følger vi op på det efterfølgende. Men i hvert fald, Marco, velkommen til, og tak for din tid. Ordet, det er dit.
Mange tak, Christian. Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining. So I will just introduce myself. I know Christian already did some short, brief introduction. My name is Marco, and I work for Ottobock Scandinavia within or as a Nordic market manager. And I've done that, or I've been in several different roles at Ottobock for almost 8 years, but during the whole period of time I've been responsible for a segment that we call neuromobility. I will just briefly introduce you to a little bit what neuromobility is about at Ottobock. As you can see, there is a variety of different solutions, very broad range of solutions that fulfills different kinds of purposes and is aimed for patients with different types of neuromuscular conditions. In the picture here, you can see a very brief range of what we can offer. We can see functional electrical stimulation, we can see some neuromodulation, but I will today be focusing on components used in custom-made orthotics, and in particularly knee joints. There are various different components being used at different levels of custom orthotic applications. And here are some, but we will again focus on what we call knee, ankle, foot orthotics. But they can also be applied to the upper extremities, they can be applied to the spine, to the head, to the whole body basically, and Ottobock offers a holistic range of solutions. But again, just to introduce you a little bit to the different knee joint systems being used in custom-made orthotics, and what we are talking about is primarily 4 different categories of knee joints. And the first category is the locked knee joint systems, which also has perhaps the longest history, and I would say that they have been developed, if not even earlier, but at least since the Second World War. And these can look very different. They can have different types of locking mechanisms. Here in the picture, you can see something that we call an internal Swiss bail lock system. And again, they can look very differently. You can use system that we call a ring lock system, or a wedge lock system with or without a pulling cable, etc. So they can look and work a bit differently, but what characterizes them is that they remain locked during the whole phase of the gait, so both during stance phase and swing phase. This, of course, has its advantages, and nevertheless, during the verticalization period, or in very early stages of rehab, when trying to, or during the initial phase of the mobilization, this can be very beneficial, since there is no risk of collapsing with leg or flexing the leg without manually unlock the system, for example, to sit down. On the contrary, we have a category called unlocked or free motion knee joint systems, which is a complete opposite to the locked ones. They remain opened and unlocked during the whole phase of the gait. So the only safety feature that is built in these systems is basically the posterior offset knee center on the mechanical knee joints. So we are increasing the distance between the anatomical knee center and the mechanical knee center in order to create extension moments, so that the patient actually can stand and load on the KAFO without flexing and bending the leg. And then we have something that we call stance phase controlled orthotic systems, which is a combination of these two prior systems, the unlocked and locked. So what it does, it locks the knee during stance phase and unlocks the knee during swing phase. And this can be controlled either electronically, or it can also be done mechanically with cable and other mechanisms. Of course, when we talked about the unlocked systems, they don't have any safety if there would, for some reason, be created some flexion moments during mobility. On the other hand, the stance phase controlled orthotic system has, but only to a certain degree, and if the patients are able to extend the leg right before initial contact and right before putting load on the leg. They also have, in order to have a full, to use the full capacity of the SCO system, they have to be able to unlock the system prior to swing phase in order to be able to walk with ground clearance. And then we have something that is completely different to all other systems, and that is the latest technology available, what we call the stance and swing phase controlled orthotic system, which is controlled by a hydraulic resistance, so to say. And I will talk a bit about that soon. Just to show you some examples of how a locked system can be displayed in action, we can see here two different situations. Where on the left side we have a patient who is in a, I would say, pretty good physical condition, walking on level surface with locked knee joint. Again, the knee joint systems has its benefits, but in the contrary, we have some downsides when it comes to compensational gait patterns that increases. You also see the overload of the contralateral side. increased energy consumption, and also it's very hard for the patient to walk with ground clearance, which also can increase the risk of stumbling or, in worst case scenario, falling. But the reality looks a little bit different. So these patients also have stairs to climb, stairs to descend, slopes, uneven terrains, and so on. So they have to be able to descend or at least be able to challenge these situations. And again, the knee joint remains locked during complete phase of the gait, and of course this comes with some limitations. I will also show you a locked system in comparison to an unlocked system, but on the right side, this could also be a stance-faced controlled orthotic system. We wouldn't see a difference just by looking at the video. The difference would be in the safety features. So again, the unlocked system doesn't have an actual mechanical lock, so it's just extension moments created during load, and the SCO system actually has a locking mechanism that will prevent the patient from collapsing or flexing the leg during load if some criteria are met. But you can immediately see what the benefits are, especially during the mobility phase on level surface. But with an SCO system during slopes and downstairs, we would need to use the knee in a locked situation if the patient isn't able to walk with an unlocked system. And here is just a picture explaining the risk with not having an extension moment in the mechanical knee joint. So as long on the left side, as long as we are creating extension moments in the mechanical knee, there isn't any risk of bending and flexing the leg. But as soon as we have maybe uneven terrain or something, or a stone or a stick that can lead to flexion moments created in the gait, there is very high risk of flexing and falling. And here is just an example. Fortunately, this is done in a gait lab, and this is a post-polio patient using KAFO with probably an unlocked system, but this could also be an SCO system where the criteria of locking the knee joint hasn't been met. And now I will tell you a little bit more about what C-brace is. And as I mentioned, we call this system for an SSCO system, and it basically tells us what it is. Stance and swing phase controlled orthotic system. So what it does, it helps the patient to more or less dynamically control the whole phase of the gait. So the system isn't neither locked, but nor it's unlocked. So it always have this hydraulic resistance, and it's always dependent on how we program the system to be. We can decide if we would like to have less hydraulic resistance in a certain situation, but also have a higher resistance in some other situations. The technology being used is the same technology as being used in the latest prosthetic knee joint systems, and we call it microprocessor controlled knees. And what it does, it provides basically higher safety during all these different situations and environments in comparison to the prior systems available. So it provides higher safety during walking, and most certainly under walking on uneven terrain. but while also maintaining or allowing a physiological gait pattern, because it's also possible to unlock the system if some certain criteria are met, or unlock the system at least during swing phase, so that the patient can easily walk with ground clearance. It also allows more controlled, or not more controlled, but controlled sitting and descending stairs and ramps. And most certainly descending stairs, because it's possible to for the patient to walk in a more physiological manner, step over step, because the hydraulic resistance will support you and help you to slowly slide into the hydraulic resistance. So you can actually put load onto the affected leg without having a free fall or a free collapse, but you will just slowly slide into the next step so you can take the next. For the patient, this often means less needed to concentrate less on where to put the leg during walking and how to put it. And a lot of these patients have a broad history of falling. So they are very afraid and often needs to concentrate how and where they put their leg. Is there anything that they could stumble over? So just a little bit briefly about technology within the system. We earlier mentioned that this is a microprocessor controlled knee, and it certainly is. But the information that is provided of the different environment and different situation is provided by different sensors to the microprocessor that in return controls this hydraulic cylinder that is inside, and that is more or less our locking mechanism, so to say, or our safety mechanism in the system, the hydraulic resistance. But what is very important here to understand that this is not an active support. This is not a motor. This is not an exoskeleton that will do the work for the patient, but the patient has to do the work themselves, and the system will support them in controlling the gait cycle, both stance phase and swing phase. Swing phase is less supported, but it's also but it often provides enough support during extension, so the patient doesn't have to have a voluntarily knee extension to be able to extend the leg just before initial contact. Because of the hydraulic resistance, will push the knee or support to push the knee a little bit more into extension if you have some locomotion. So who can be fitted? When we are trying out C-brace, we tend to not look too much into different conditions, even though conditions can tell us if there are any severe spasticity or any severe contractures. That also could be some contraindications, not because the system won't work, but more because of the limitations of the patient. And that is not necessarily only related to C-brace, but orthotics in general. Severe spasticity and contractures are most often something that limits us to be able to fulfill the needs of the patient, whether we're talking about C-brace or some other systems or orthotics in general. But again, what we mainly are looking at, or what is maybe most important, is that the patient have enough trunk and or in best case scenario hip strength to be able to locomote or to be able to take some steps forward. If not, the system would need to be set into a locked mode to support the patient with perhaps verticalization, or to support the patient in at least taking some few steps forward. So again, it's not a motor that will push your legs forward or the patient's leg forward, but you have to do the work yourself. We often meet patients with traumatic injuries. I've met a lot of MS patients, also polio or post-polio. So it can be different conditions behind the reason. And maybe what's interesting for you guys is that we also now can offer something that we call a CBI, a C-brace interim solution, which is a more prefabricated knee, ankle, foot orthosis that can be partly customized for each patient, and also applied to a patient within a day, or in best case scenario, a couple of hours. And this is safe to use in long-term rehab, so for a maximum time of 6 months. In comparison to a fully custom KAFO, that usually can take a couple of weeks in best case scenario, or even months to produce, depending on the current capacity and workload of the workshop that you are collaborating with. Last but not least, I would just like to show you a couple of patients that are using C-brace, and this is Denise. You can hear her story on YouTube, but she had disc hernia and went through a surgery that failed, and that resulted in some loss, function loss in her right leg. And here you can see a comparison between her using C-brace and without. And she most certainly have a very interesting technique, descending stairs. You will also see that she will be able to walk step over step, and she can support or she can put equally amount of load on her affected side as she's putting on her sound side, which is, by the way, necessary in order to use the function within the system fully. And here is a situation where she descends a slope, also using the same technique by slowly yielding into the system. We call it yielding, but it's basically sinking into the hydraulic resistance. And I have passed my time, but I hope that is fine anyway. I will just show you Wolfgang, who is a post-polio patient. He is, you can also see, bilaterally affected. On the left side, he has an AFO, and you can first of all see his gait pattern. How much he needs to compensate to be able to come over in the next step, and not least descending stairs. He used to have a locked knee joint system prior to C-brace. And lastly, a patient, a bilateral patient with a tumor on, she had a tumor on the lumbar spine, and again, loss of function in both sides. And of course, Rebecca, she wouldn't be able to to descend stairs without putting all her load on the arms. And the restriction for her walking up slopes, I would assume, is more related to the ankles in this case, because maybe you have noticed that she also has a mechanical ankle joint in the brace, which also supports her with maybe not only dorsiflexion, but also plantar flexion. Sorry for taking too much time, Christian, but thank you, and I would like to invite you again and open for some questions.
Tak for det, Marco. Pau, som har styret chatten. Jeg ved ikke, om du lige vil fortælle, om der er kommet nogle spørgsmål.
Det vil jeg gerne. Og ved du hvad, der er kommet et par stykker. Marco, der er en, der spørger, når nu man går på trapper med C-brace, er der noget, man skal tænke over? Hvordan skal man instruere som fysioterapeut? Er der nogle ting i forhold til C-bracen, man skal tænke over?
Very good question. There are first of all, we have a complete training for physios when training with the patient, so you can actually practice these different situations. But maybe one important thing to consider is that when normally a patient doesn't stand still before descending the stairs, but they are actually walking, and then they come to a stair and they start to descend the stairs. It's very important to instruct the patient that usually when they are going to take their first step into the stairs, that they make sure that the knee joint isn't unlocked, because normally they would perhaps unlock the system or unlock the system prior to swing phase, and then they would take the first step down. So we usually instruct the patients to, when coming to a stair, just stay briefly, and then the first step you take, I would like the patient to take the first step actually loading the affected side, so that they descend with the sound side, so that they actually use the benefits of the hydraulic resistance so that they can sink in slowly. Is that answering? Thanks.
Det tænker jeg fint forklarer det, og ellers så må I lige skrive igen, både på telefonen og på chatten, hvis der er noget, I er i tvivl om, hvis det skal uddybes. Der er en, der spørger, C-bracen, er det ligesom med de der proteseknælede, at den skal lades op? Altså denne her, når du taler om, at C-bracen jo er MPK også, hvor tit skal den lades op?
So normally, the patients who are using the system needs to, we usually instruct them to charge the system each and every night, exactly as they charge their mobile phone, for example. I've talked to Wolfgang here, who is a patient. He lives in Germany, and I think he told me that he can use his system without charging maybe up to 2 to 3 days even, depending on how active he has been, how much he has been using the system, and so on. But even though if the battery would die, there is a safety mode built in the system. So if the battery would die, the joint would set itself to this safety mode, which is programmed by us who are certified in C-brace. So up to 2 to 3 days, depending on a little bit on how it's being used. But normally I would recommend anyway to charge the system every night as you charge the phone. And of course, if you for some reason would forget one night, that wouldn't be an issue, most likely.
Så jeg tror, vi tager et sidste spørgsmål, for jeg kan se, at tiden løber, så vi skal til at runde af. Så hvis vi nu tager det sidste spørgsmål, og så kan vi måske slutte af med, at du giver os dit bedste tip, Marco. Det sidste spørgsmål, det er EMAG versus C-brace. Hvem profilerer så af C-brace? Altså, hvem er det, vi skal forsyne med en C-brace, som så ikke kan nøjes med, eller skal have EMAG'en?
Very good question also. I would say that all patients that are using EMAG would benefit from C-brace because of the limitations that EMAG offers. So it's the same patient group, and basically all patients would be a potential candidate that are able to locomote or to walk. As I mentioned, the only situation I would put a locked knee joint system on a patient would be in the initial verticalization phase or initial mobilization phase, where the patient just isn't yet ready to, start to walk really, but maybe taking the first few steps. But when it comes to mobility, then there would more or less be no reason for me to suggest a C-brace because of the possibilities being offered. Yep.
Yes. Så måske her til sidst dit bedste tip. Du sagde det faktisk inden midt i noget af det. Hvordan er det, når vi kigger på vores borgere, på vores patienter? Hvad er det, vi sådan meget nemt kigger efter? Du talte noget om, at man skulle kunne føre benet frem, om det var torso eller det var UE, man flyttede med, og man skulle have en postural kontrol. Vil du gentage de få ting, og så kunne det måske være det aller sidste?
So that is actually one of my best tips. I would recommend you to first of all reach out to your local Bandagist clinic and try to establish a close collaboration, because only together you can reach the best patient outcome. But I understand your question: how should I choose, or what is my first step? And normally, especially like this remotely, if I get a call, for example, oh, hi Marco, I have this and this type of patient. She walks like this and that. How do I know if C-brace can be suitable? So the first step would be, I would probably ask you to fill a short form, just for me to see if there aren't any contraindications like severe contractures, for example, or severe spasticity. Another exclusion criteria could be a severe leg discrepancy, so a difference in the leg lengths. Which could potentially lead to not being able to fully use the benefits of C-brace. So that would be the first step. The next step would probably be for us to try out something that what we call a diagnostic test orthosis, which is a universal tool that we use to try on various patients. They can be short, tall, wide, thin, and we can, as good as possible, apply this dynamic testing tool to try out if C-brace actually could be beneficial for this patient. But it's only for initial try, and the next best step would be to either manufacture a custom-made KAFO, or at least try out the CBI, which is a combination of prefab and partly customized KAFO.
Mange tak, Marco. Over til dig, Christian.
Jamen, vi er gået lidt over tid, men til gengæld fik vi også virkelig, virkelig meget brugbar information. Så jeg vil ikke tage jeres tid yderligere, bare lige gøre opmærksom på, at der i chatten er link til diverse videoer, men også til, at man kan opskrive sig til vores faglige nyhedsbrev, hvis man vil undgå at risikere at misse relevante kurser, webinarer eller andet. Så gør det. Og ellers så vil jeg bare afslutningsvis tak til dig, Marco, og tak til jer for I deltog. Og I er altså velkommen til at kontakte, hvis I er interesseret i at diskutere C-Brace eller andet med Marco eller os, så står vi klar. Men tak for nu. Nyd solskinnet, og vi ses. Hej.
Mange tak.